What time it is? You know where you gotta be. Here I am, expressing myself. It's Thursday night, and I'm doing what I do. I'm gonna share a little something with you because I got something to say. So it must be true. So folks, come on through. Express yourself.
Whatever you do, do it good.
Where you at? Where you at?
Whatever
There you go.
Lord, Lord.
Do it good. All right.
It's not
Ah.
what you look like.
When you're doing what you're doing, it's what you're doing. When you're doing it, what you look like you're doing.
Express yourself.
Oh, somebody give me, oh, what's up, Gwen? Can you hear me, baby? What's up, Dre? What's up? Oh, I got two Jersey brothers in the house. In the jungle, too. Everybody on the floor now. Kangaroos. So let the horns do the thing they do. Blow. Spaghetti that bip bop. Spaghetti that bop. What's up, people? Somebody give me hands up. Let me know. Let me know. Thumbs up. Where I'm at. Where I'm at. Can you hear me? 2020. But everything don't mean a thing if it ain't the thing you want. Somebody better give me a thumbs up. Let me know y'all can hear me. I got my ears on. I feel like I'm on OCB. Breaker 19. This is the Batman. Wall to wall, treetops tall, coming at you in 3D. So groovy that I dig me. I dig me. I dig me. So where you at, people? Express yourself. Skip it up, boop, 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 boop. Skip it up, boop, boop. Skip it up, boop, boop, boop. I'm gonna cut that. I'm gonna cut that. I get carried away on this song, folks. It's cold outside. It's cold here in Florida. I want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. Of course, you know my show is called I Got Something to Say, so it must be true. We had a lot happening. Usually I try to do my show like a week in advance, but things are happening so quickly here lately that I wind up editing and updating information, so forth and so on. So my show tonight, I want to start off the same way I've started off the last few shows and thanking those people that have just become essential. You know, in the past they were working in the grocery stores and they were delivering mail and in the gas stores and places like this, and nobody showed them any love. Now suddenly, you know, they're at the front line. And then I want to give a even bigger shout out to the people that are near dear my heart, my healthcare workers. You know, those are the people that is kind of, I keep saying, staring down the virus on a day-to-day basis, on a patient-to-patient basis. They don't know how many people they're going to see, the concentration of the virus, et cetera, et cetera. So they not only put themselves in harm's way, but they put their family in harm's way as well. So I want to give a big shout out to them. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a few things. Tonight I have what I call 3 Bs. That's Barack, Biden, and Bernie. I'm going to talk a little bit about peak week paranoia and how it's starting to manifest itself. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Corona. Then we're going to get on out of here. Last week I talked about peak week and how it manifests itself. And we're starting to see some of the signs of itself in what I call cabin fever. Now we hear the media telling you what I told you 5 weeks ago. at the onset of corona. They're saying now the curve is starting to flatten out because more and more people are being tested. Lastly, they're telling you to maintain your social distance and stay put for just a little while longer. On the other hand, they're saying they want to get the country back to work and so forth and so on. So, three things tonight. WHO, World Health Organization, BB&B, the three Bs, and 2020, this virus and where we go next. So, I want to reassure you and I want to caution you because Corona has shown us a few things about ourselves. It's shown us that even at our worst, we can still be the best people that we can be. So, without any further ado, tonight's podcast is titled, Who's on First? We come to the climax of what I call peak week. Most of us have been quarantining for about 4 to 5 weeks. The last 2 to 3 weeks, we've been diligently trying to stay inside, just being diligent about, trying to maintain our households and keeping safe and so forth and so on. Truth is, no matter how much you care for someone or you love someone, after a while, they just get on your nerve. I guess that's where the saying, absence makes the heart grows fonder, comes from. There are many reasons that this phenomenon happens, but the simplest is anytime our routine is changed, we experience what's called a culture shock. We crave doing what we want to do and when we feel like doing it. Manifestation of this paranoia and this peak week thing is on Easter Sunday. We saw about 200 people gathering together for Easter egg hunt in Pensacola. If that wasn't crazy enough, today it's cold in Florida. But 2 days ago, it was probably the hottest day of the year. So how did people celebrate? They went down to the beach and they frolicked in the water. So police went and chased them off the same way they did in Pensacola. So I guess I want to give a shout out to my police because everybody's always coming down on them. But in both Pensacola and Titusville, Florida, they disbanded the crowds without arresting anyone. People are anxious about their finances. They're anxious about, and they're fearful of the unknown. They're wondering what comes next. But they're even more anxious about getting back to something that relates to what they call normal, be it a new normal or being able to resume their lives. They're talking about the flattening of the curve, and now you're starting to hear more and more numbers. From the onset of this virus, I know I bored you guys with these epidemiology stats. To some that have personal connections, I probably pissed you off by saying that this pandemic, though it's serious, is only affecting less than 1% of the population. I told you 3 weeks ago that 95 to 97% of those people that have been infected with the virus survived and got over it. So now, other media outlets are starting to say the same thing that I've been saying. I made the prediction based on the numbers that I was seeing from around the world. I wasn't sure how it was going to happen here. But usually the thing about science, it's a little bit more exact than social science. Physical science is more exact. If it happens 3 out of 5 times, well, then we know that it tends to carry that way. We do have anomalies. True to form, I also predicted that the mortality or death rate of this was in the 3 to 4% range. So 95 to 97% survived, 3 to 4% succumbed to this virus and they pass. Despite the poor management of this virus from 45, those numbers still hold valid here in America. And I think I'll make some predictions that I think that the 2 places that have been most hard hit are those places that have a lot of international visitors. So not getting the information, not disseminating it, probably pushed us closer to the 4% mortality rate versus the upper limits of the 3%. Not that bad, but I think it still could have been avoided. Personally, what pisses me off is I turn on the news and we've been disproportionately affected. Now, I said in the past that this is because a lot of us are obese and we're dealing with heart ailments and heart disease and stroke and diabetes, and all of these things just make us not just susceptible to those things like heart attack and strokes. It also made us, we found out that it makes us susceptible to being infected. And when we are infected, we're leaning towards that 3% of the population that succumbs to the virus. So what pissed me off is when I look at TV, and this is not a black-white thing, but I see these white people that are being on the news, and I saw one newscast where they had all of these healthcare workers lining both sides of the aisle, and this guy who had been in ICU for 5 days, he was deemed safe and ready to go home, and they're pushing him out. He's carrying flowers, and they're clapping and what have you. I say it would have done our heart a whole lot better. It would have been so encouraging to us to see some of the black people that have overcome this virus be pushed out or wheeled out of the hospital and doing well. We need that encouragement. We need those things, that hope to look for. So I think it would have done something for people of color. When I talk about the 97%, I'm a nerd. I taught anatomy and physiology. Human physiology is freaking amazing. As I said before, and I've been saying this for about 3 weeks now, and everybody probably thought I was crazy. What does he know that the doctors don't know? Well, they're forced to be cautious because they have to answer to some people. I say what I want. I have no board of directors. I have no editor telling me, well, don't say this and this, that, and the other. So I'm free to say these things, and that's why what I say seems to be preemptive to what they're going to say. So I'm going to say this. Human physiology is amazing. It's amazing because some of us just have a natural immunity to different things, be it diseases or, in this case, viruses. If we're serious about developing a vaccine, we should be mass testing. Now, I said this 2 weeks ago. I repeated it last week, and I'm going to say it again this week. We need to be mass testing to find out, at this stage, someone with 6 degrees of separation, someone that has come in contact with you has, I don't want to say affected you or infected you with the virus, but you've come in contact with the virus. If you're strong enough, you just kind of blow it off, or you may feel a little bad for a couple of days and get better. What we need to be doing, if we were testing everybody, we would say, okay, this person is positive for the virus, but they're asymptomatic. Not only that, but they're in the end stages of this infection. So what is it about their immune system that made them immune to this virus? And that's the quickest way to getting them to a vaccine. So that's where I am. And one of the things that brought me to this, I thought of, my head never stops, but I thought of the story of Henrietta Lacks. And we remember that Henrietta Lacks was this black woman whose cells were the first to be what they call immune. Her cells replicated, which means they when they started working with them in the lab, they didn't just die out. So her cells have been replicated time and time and time and time again, and it's been used from everything from cancer research to in vitro fertilization. So that just tells you, we never know who the next Henrietta Lacks is, and we never know what inside us makes us who we are. So if we were doing that mass testing, not to beat a dead horse, but just to drive it home, if we were doing mass testing, we would find out what it is about some of us that makes us immune to the virus, and we would come up, if not with a vaccine, with some answers on how to deal with some of the people that have pre-existing or underlying conditions that make them more susceptible to succumbing to the virus. The other thing that we saw with this virus in the medical community was a shift in what's called a standard of care. Standard of care is no more than a set of rules or policies that the powers to be it the board of directors, medical exec committee, or somebody comes up with, and they decide that this is going to be how everyone is going to be treated. So if you come in with a fever of 101, we're going to do a throat culture, we're going to do a chest x-ray, blah, 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 blah. That becomes the standard of care. It could be nationwide or it could be throughout a medical system. What we saw initially was people that had this virus were being wheeled into ICU. Some of them were being put on a ventilator, and others were just left there. So we saw people dying alone, isolated. I saw a thing with a nurse who was just crying. She said she just was fed up. She loved her job, but she was fed up with walking into people's room and just seeing that they had passed. They just couldn't keep up. Then we saw the shift. The shift was to send some of these people home and see how they fared. I know a couple of people that went home and they isolated themselves at home away from their families. Those that were given medicines and what have you, some of them fared out pretty well. And what I kept looking for was a correlation, and I know I'm nerding out, so just give me 5 minutes to nerd here. I was looking for a correlation or relationship with those that got better, not because I'm in touch with NIH or CDC, but I feel like if I can draw this correlation, there are others who are thinking the same way simultaneously, but they're in a position that have these study groups and what have you. So if I'm thinking it, I feel like they're thinking it. The bad thing about this, the shift in standard of care, some people were just sent home without any medication. It could be because they didn't have enough of the medication, and it could be because the type of insurance that they had. So I just won't even get into all of the possibilities, the variations of why they were just sent home without medication. But initially it pissed me off. After a while, I felt a little bit better about it because I felt like at least their family had a connection and they got a chance to say their goodbyes versus getting a call from the hospital that, your daddy, James Taylor, just passed. He's been dead for 2 days and we just found out blah, 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 blah. So I thought the shift in the standard of care was more humane. I thought it just brought us back to more of a humanity place, a real place of caring. How it was administered was kind of like Trump and his dissemination of medical equipment. I'm going to give it to this one because I like them and they're Republicans. I'm not going to give it to them because they've spoken badly about me in the past. Incidentally, I haven't gotten my check yet, so maybe it's because I talk about his ass so much. I want my money. Okay, let me move on. So I just like to see, having been an administrator and written policy, we have to make sure that the policy is enforced across the continuum. Across, everybody's treated the same. That's the whole reason for establishing policy and standard of care. Now we're starting to see everybody's chiming in on what COVID-19 is, what the coronavirus is, who's susceptible and why we're dying, and we got to do this and we got to do that. I saw Puffy and one of my boys say Puffy looked like looked like Danny Glover, and I was like, yeah, it looked like if Miss Seeley and Mister had a kid, it would look like Puff. So I get the P stood for purple, the color purple. Anyway, yeah. What makes my message different from all of these other people? Like I keep saying, I'm a nerd. You know, I've always been a nerd. I've never been like other people, and I've felt a need to write a book. Then I said, well, who's going to buy the book? Because most of the people that I know I care about would never read it. So I started trying to disseminate this information in a way that it was somewhat informative, but some with a little twinge of comedy, lightheartedness, where people would want to get into it. I said all of that to say this. Since 2000, January of 2017, I've been trying to educate the masses because I kind of knew what was going to happen with Trump. The day he stood up and he says, you know, I had big crowds at my inauguration, enormous crowds, bigger than ever before. We had more people at my inauguration than there are on Earth. Okay, whatever, man. So I realized the type of person he was going to be. It was obvious he was this egotistical narcissist. And so I started educating. I started planning 3 years ahead, and I started thinking about who was going to be the best person to dethrone him. And I've just been holding out for two things, that Joe Biden and Ruth Ginsburg could hold out. I said that I would be one of her bodyguards because the thing that scares me is this man being able to put one or two more people on the Supreme Court. So I've been hoping that Biden and Ginsburg would hold out. In an earlier podcast, I told you about a political science assignment in college. In the assignment, the professor asked us to write a term paper about who was the best president and why. And after pondering, I said that it was not the man that was the best president. It was how they reacted to the crisis while they were in office that made them great. For example, FDR was great because he was the only president to serve 3 terms. Then he was smart enough to pass the 25th Amendment so that the president would have a 2-term limit. He guided the country through the Great Depression as well. And he came up with a lot of social programs that evolved into Social Security, welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what made FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, great. JFK was great not because the Civil Rights Act, because it was actually done in '64 by Johnson, LBJ. It's because he was a visionary. He, in his inaugural address, he said something that resonated with us, and it still resonates with me today. In 1960, I was 1 year old. But to hear him say it, the first time I heard him say it, and every time since then, it brings chills to me because it should be the mantra of public service. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you could do for your country. Just imagine if the people that are in Congress and in the White House now, if those people were doing what was best for the country and not just looking out for self and those like them, we would be in a whole lot better place than we are now. So that's what made JFK great. What made Lincoln great was not the fact that that he freed the slaves, because he was a bit of an enigma. He owned slaves himself. What he did was what was best for the country, not necessarily for himself, even though he knew that it would probably cost him, if not politically, it would cost him his life, and it wound up doing so. Obama was great, not because he was the black president or anything like that, but if you remember back in 2006, 2007, going into 2008, Wall Street was crashing, banks were inflation, so we were headed for a second Great Depression. President Obama had the vision to get things done. And he would have been able to do so many more things if people would have really been working with him. But what he did was he scaved off second Great Depression. He saved Wall Street, and I still have mixed emotion about this, but he said something. These banks are too big to fail. So you think about our economic system, our financial system failing. Today, there are a lot of corporations I'd like to see fail, but banking, not as long as they have my few little nickels. So that's what made him great. Said all of that to say this. In my humble opinion, when history remembers 45, he will be remembered probably for his impeachment, but he'll also be remembered for how he mismanaged this crisis. Let me say that one more time. In my humble opinion, I believe 45 will be remembered for how he mismanaged this crisis, this pandemic crisis called Corona. He'll be remembered because in the midst of all of this, he decided to defund, withhold funding for the World Health Organization. He said that they didn't give him heads up. Well, we already know. He said back then, we remember when they told him that there was a pandemic where there was this virus that they foresaw becoming a pandemic, and we should take preemptive strikes to make sure that it didn't affect us. Well, he thought it was going to be no big deal. It would be gone like this and that. So he kind of didn't disseminate the information to his governors and mayors, and consequently, they could have made some decisions about how they manage some things like Mardi Gras and New Year's and Times Square and some other things, some big gatherings where people from around the world come to the United States. And if these things were canceled, some people would not have been exposed to this virus, and we wouldn't have seen what we've seen. But that's neither here nor there. That's what I think he's going to be remembered. He's going to be remembered for his impeachment. He's going to be remembered for his nepotism. He's going to be remembered for how he pimped the country and took all that he could. The antithesis of ask not what your country can do for you, in his eyes, is ask what your country can do for me and those that I care about, and to hell with everyone else. He might even be remembered for non-funding mass testing, and like I said before, selectively distributing life-saving medical equipment to those people that he felt were allies instead of fairly giving it out amongst the masses. So now, who's on first? 3 B's, the triple B. Here we go. We're wrapping it up in 20. A few days ago, Bernie Sanders endorsed Joe Biden. The following day, Barack came out of the shadows and formally endorsed Joe Biden. So I call them the 3 B's. Barack, Biden, and Bernie, the triple crown. Speaking of petty and anticlimactic, 2 days after Obama endorsed Biden, Elizabeth Warren comes out of the woodwork and makes this quiet little endorsement of Joe Biden as well. Hint, hint. Maybe that's why Elizabeth Warren couldn't win one state, not even the 2 states that she calls home, Oklahoma. I'm just besides myself. That's why I wrote on my page a couple of days ago, when the right woman decides to run, we're going to know. She's going to rise up the same way Barack Obama did. We're going to know. So I want to stop hearing people say, well, this woman is female and it's time for this and it's time for that. We're going to know when a right person is there, and we're going to feel it. And it won't just be women wanting to see another woman in a position of power. It's going to be the right woman who's seeking this office because she has the tools necessary. And yes, enough men have messed up the office, and I'm not defending that. I'm just saying what I said, and I said what I said. So, where are we now? It looks like the Democratic nomination is a slam dunk. But then there's the Republicans. See, Mitch and Don has ramped up their assault on America. Here lately, they've been immorally but legally taking everything that they could get their hands on, from tax breaks to giving you $1,200 and giving $1.7 million to rich people. Where is the equity in that? They see the handwriting on the wall. If we do what we are supposed to do, it should be a landslide. There's not enough Russians to throw this election if the Democrats, the independents, and those real Republicans who are patriotic enough stand up and say, you know what, enough of this madness. It's time to get to governing the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So they see the handwriting on the wall. All we have to do to get rid of 45, we have to be diligent. Make sure that you're registered to vote. Even in this primary, Bernie's out of the race. Even if his name is still on the ballot, I'm asking you, I'm imploring you, start now. Start your transition, and even if you are a Bernie follower, vote for Biden now. This show of strength or this wasting a vote of solidarity, this is not high school. We're not voting for prom queen. We're not voting for our friend because we want them to have something to put on their resume when they go to college. We're talking about getting this country back on track. So without beating a dead horse, I'm going to say it again. I've been telling you that since 2017, that this is the logical choice. Why? Because Biden has mass appeal to those three groups, the Dems, the Democrats, the independents, and those moderate Republicans who are quietly keeping their opinion to themselves, but looking for alternative to delusional Donnie. Here are the facts. I said this last week. I'm going to repeat it again. Number one, 46% of registered voters did not vote in 2016. Trump won. America lost big. Number two, white women despise Hillary so much that they voted for a self-absorbed womanizer and woman abuser who said he could murder someone in Times Square and still be elected. Number three, already said it, I'm going to say it again. Biden is logically the best option to dethrone delusional Donnie, 45. Number four, Biden really has evolved. He served admirably as Barack's vice president for 8 years, and he made a name. He formed relationships around the globe. That's very important now. He also got progressive legislation like Obamacare passed. So suddenly all of these pre-existing and underlying conditions, they mean that you can still get insurance despite having these things. Number five, Joe did make amends. He apologizes both publicly and privately to Anita Hill. Number six, and I think this is important. Clarence Thomas got a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. He never said anything. He always said that he didn't do it. He didn't even say, well, even if my actions were misconstrued, I apologize. So Who's paying for Clarence's transgressions? Is it Clarence Thomas? Or is it people looking for a reason? And here's how the rumor mill goes. Who do you think starts these rumors? It's those people who are most afraid, Trump supporters who are most afraid of Biden dethroning him. Number 7, I talk about Ruth Ginsburg, Bader Ginsburg. In the next 2 to 4 years, there's a potential of 2 appointments to the Supreme Court. Who would you like to see make those appointments to the Supreme Court? Would it be 45? And we saw the type of people that he's already appointed to the Supreme Court and some of the federal judgeships. Or would it be somebody who's more progressive, who have people in mind, like Biden? And lastly, I'm going to finish up with the same question that I did last week, because I think it's important. Are you the same person today that you were in 1989? In 1989, 88-89 were the proceedings for Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. Are you the same person? Some people evolve, some people never change. So in closing, as always, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank you for your time, your attention. I want to remind you to go to my YouTube channel and hit like and subscribe. Don't cost you anything. That little question about asking for this or that, just say no, and get to my page and hit like. Go through the podcast you haven't had a chance to see yet. On those that you've come in late on, you have a chance to see them from beginning to end. Hit subscribe. That way you're updated when I load up more information. I'm getting people coming to me that I don't know from around the world because the word is getting out. I know what I'm saying is relevant because I see news conglomerates saying what I say. With that, I'm just going to say this. I am here because I have something to say. Other people are repeating what I've already said, so we know it must be true. See me here next week, same Baptiste time, same Baptiste place. It's always important. Love, peace, and I'll see you when I see you. Good night, people. I should give me a couple of shout outs. Lisa, always the last one. Elisa. Barbara, thank you. Lucian, how's it going, man? Angela, yes, he did. Oh, my goodness. Hey, Shirley, how's it going, fam? Liza with a Z. Angela just been sounding out tonight. Jackie, what's up? Val, what's up? I see you, Lady Val. Kathy, you're in the place. Kenneth, what's up, Carver, right? Dre, I'm glad to see you in the place, bro. Big thumbs up to you too, man. Sandra, what's happening, kitten? Bev, what's up? And Gwen, Cousin Floyd. That's the other Jersey boy, Dre. My cousin live in Jersey too, and from that area. So everybody, those that I can't see, those that are hiding in the wing, I didn't get a chance to shout out to you. You're just as important. If I can't see you, I apologize. Thank you for your support. See you next week.